Captain Ji-Wan gripped the controls of her ship as the stars blurred past the viewport. The whisper lived up to its name. Silent, invisible, perfect for reconnaissance missions deep into enemy territory. But tonight her hands trembled. She had seen things no human should see. 3 hours ago, she watched the Kralvan Armada destroy an entire world. The planet was called Thelros, home to 8 million people who refused to surrender. The Kralvan gave them one warning. When the planetary governor said no, they opened fire. Massive warships surrounded the planet like predators circling wounded prey. Their weapons lit up the darkness. Beams of energy struck the surface, carving through cities and mountains. Oceans boiled. Continents cracked. Within minutes, Thelros became a burning graveyard. Ji-Wan recorded everything. Her ship's cameras captured the horror while she hid in the shadow of a dead moon. The Kralvan never noticed her. They were too busy celebrating their victory. Now she flew home carrying the worst news Earth had ever received. The Kralvan were coming, and they would not stop. The whisper emerged from hyperspace near Earth's outer defense perimeter. Military stations scanned her approach, confirmed her identity, and cleared her to dock. Ji-Wan barely remembered the landing procedures. Her mind kept replaying the destruction of Thelros, the screams on the communication channels, the silence that followed. Admiral Daehyun waited for her in the briefing room. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battles. When Ji-Wan entered, he stood and gestured to a chair. She sat without a word and handed him the data chip containing her recordings. He inserted it into the holographic display. The room filled with images of destruction, burning cities, exploding ships, the final moments of a civilization. Daehyun watched in silence. His jaw tightened, but he showed no other emotion. He had learned long ago that commanders could not afford to feel, not when billions of lives depended on their decisions. When the recording ended, he looked at Ji-Wan. Her face was pale, her hands still shaking. "How many ships?" he asked. "At least 300 dreadnoughts," she replied. "Maybe more. They have destroyers, carriers, support vessels. I counted over 1,000 ships in total. And Admiral, their weapons went through the planetary shields like they were nothing." Daehyun nodded slowly. Earth's entire fleet had maybe 50 combat-ready ships. They were outnumbered 20 to 1. Worse, the Kralvan had technology Earth could barely understand. Their shields absorbed conventional weapons. Their ships moved faster and hit harder. For 3 centuries, they had conquered every species they encountered. "When will they reach us?" Daehyun asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. They are assembling near the Thelros system. Once they finish consolidating their forces, they will move on the next target. According to their communication intercepts, that target is us. The Admiral dismissed her and immediately called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every nation gathered in the war room beneath Geneva. The holographic display showed the Kralvan fleet in all its terrifying glory. Ships the size of cities, weapons that could crack planets, an empire that had never lost a war. Panic spread through the council chambers. Some representatives demanded immediate evacuation. Others wanted to surrender and hope for mercy. A few called for prayer. Daehyun let them talk. He understood their fear. But fear would not save them. After an hour of chaos, he stood and silenced the room with a single gesture. His voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. "We have one advantage," he said. "The Kralvan think we are weak. They believe this will be easy. They are wrong." He activated another hologram. This one showed a sleek torpedo with glowing blue markings. The quantum disruption torpedo, Dr. Seojun's masterpiece. Dr. Seojun stepped forward. He was younger than most people expected for Earth's chief weapons scientist. Barely 40 years old with messy black hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. But his mind was brilliant. While the Kralvan relied on brute force, Seojun had found a weakness. Their shields work by absorbing energy, Seojun explained. Our conventional weapons hit the shield and get neutralized. But quantum torpedoes exist in superposition. They are both there and not there until the moment of impact. The shields cannot detect them, cannot stop them. When the torpedo collapses into a single state, it appears inside the shield barrier and detonates directly against the hull. One council member raised his hand. "How many do we have?" Seojun hesitated. 17. The room fell silent. 17 torpedoes against 1,000 ships. The math was impossible. "Why so few?" another representative demanded. The quantum cores require crystallized neutronium, Seojin said. It is extremely rare. We have exhausted our entire supply. The nearest source is in the Viridian Expanse, deep in contested space. Even if we send a mining expedition, there is no guarantee we can secure enough material before the Kralvin arrive. Daehyun turned to Jiwon. Captain, you will lead the mining expedition. Take your best pilots. We need those resources or we are finished. Jiwon nodded. She did not like the odds, but she had stopped believing in safety the moment she watched Thelros burn. As the council dispersed, another figure entered the room. Ambassador Minyoung had just returned from a covert mission to the outer sectors. She looked exhausted. Her diplomatic uniform was dusty and torn, but her eyes burned with determination. I have news, she said. The Thalen are willing to help. The Thalen were an aquatic species enslaved by the Kralvin 50 years ago. They were master shipbuilders forced to construct warships for their oppressors. Minyoung had spent weeks negotiating with their underground resistance, offering them hope in exchange for support. They have hidden shipyards, Minyoung continued, places the Kralvin do not know about. They can build modified human ships using our designs, but they want something in return. They want freedom. If we win, we help them win too. Daehyun considered this. An alliance with the Thalen could shift the balance. Not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to give them a chance. Tell them we accept, he said, but make it clear, if we lose, everyone loses. There will be no second chances. Minyoung smiled grimly and left to send the message. Far across the galaxy, High Commander Varkesh stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a towering figure even among the Kralvin. His species resembled armored reptiles with thick scales and burning red eyes. He had personally overseen the conquest of 40 worlds. Humanity would be the 41st. His officers presented reports on the upcoming invasion, troop deployments, supply lines, expected resistance. Varkesh barely listened. He had heard it all before. Every species thought they could resist. Every species learned the same lesson. The Kralvin were inevitable. How long until we reach human space? He asked. 14 days, Commander, an officer replied. Varkesh nodded. Prepare the fleet. I want every ship ready for immediate combat. These humans have no idea what is coming. We will crush them so completely that no other species will ever dare resist us again. His officers saluted and returned to their stations. Outside the viewport, hundreds of warships prepared for departure. Their engines glowed like dying stars. The armada was a promise of destruction, a weapon aimed at the heart of humanity. Back on Earth, Daehyun stood alone in the war room long after everyone else had left. He looked at the holographic display showing the Kralvin fleet. So many ships, so much power. The odds were impossible. Any reasonable strategist would counsel surrender, but Daehyun was not reasonable. He was human, and humans had survived worse odds before. They had climbed out of caves to touch the stars. They had split atoms and cured diseases. They had fought wars that should have destroyed them and emerged stronger. The Kralvin thought humanity was weak. They would learn the truth soon enough. When cornered, when threatened with extinction, humans did not surrender. They fought. They adapted. They won. Daehyun closed the display and walked toward the exit. There was work to do. Ships to prepare. Weapons to build. Alliances to forge. The galaxy had burned under Kralvin rule for 3 centuries. It was time for humanity to rise. The Kralvin armada arrived at Titan Station like a storm made of steel and fire. 12 days had passed since Jiwon delivered her warning. 12 days of frantic preparation. 12 days that humanity knew would not be enough. Titan Station orbited Saturn's largest moon. It was humanity's furthest military outpost, home to 5,000 soldiers and enough firepower to defend a solar system. Against the Kralvin, it might as well have been made of paper. Commander Park commanded the station. She was a veteran of border conflicts and pirate raids. Nothing had prepared her for this. Through the observation windows, she watched the enemy fleet emerge from hyperspace. Hundreds of warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with alien metal. Their weapons bristled like the spines of some predatory beast. A communication channel opened. High Commander Varkesh's face appeared on every screen throughout the station. His reptilian features showed nothing but contempt. Humans of Titan Station, he said. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons. Evacuate to the surface of the moon. Do this within 1 hour and your deaths will be quick. Resist and you will watch everything you love burn before we kill you slowly. He transmitted footage from Thelros. The burning cities, the exploding ships, the silence of extinction. It was meant to terrify them, to break their spirit before the first shot was fired. Commander Park looked around at her crew. Young faces, old faces, people who had families waiting for them back on Earth. She thought about ordering an evacuation, about saving their lives even if it meant abandoning the station. Then she remembered why they were here. Titan Station was not just a military base. It was a symbol, a line in the darkness. If they surrendered now, the Kralvin would know that humanity could be frightened into submission. Every battle after this would be harder to win. She opened a return channel. Hi, Commander Varkesh. This is Commander Park of Titan Station. I have reviewed your offer. My response is no. If you want this station, you will have to take it. Varkesh's eyes narrowed. For a moment, he seemed almost impressed. Then he smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. So be it, your bravery will be forgotten. Your names will be erased. You will become nothing but dust and warnings. The channel closed. The Kralvin fleet advanced. The battle began with overwhelming violence. Kralvin dreadnoughts opened fire from extreme range. Beams of superheated plasma crossed the void in seconds. Titan Station's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the first impacts. The entire structure shook. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed throughout the corridors. Commander Park ordered return fire. The station's main cannons roared to life. Missiles streaked toward the enemy fleet. Railgun slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Every weapon humanity possessed unleashed hell upon the approaching warships. The Kralvin shields absorbed everything. The missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible barriers. The railgun slugs vaporized on impact. It was like shooting at a mountain and expecting it to notice. More plasma beams hammered the station. The shields began to fail. Section by section, they collapsed under the relentless assault. Exposed hull plating melted. Atmosphere vented into space. Crew members scrambled to seal breaches while continuing to fire their weapons in a desperate, futile defense. Varkesh watched from his flagship with satisfaction. This was how invasions should proceed. Quick, decisive, no surprises. Within minutes, Titan Station would be debris, and the humans would learn their first lesson in obedience. Then something changed. Captain Jiwan and her squadron emerged from hiding. They had been waiting in the debris field behind Titan Station, their stealth systems masking their presence. 12 small fighters against the might of an empire. It should have been suicide. But Jiwan carried something the Kralvin had never encountered. Dr. Seojan's quantum torpedoes. Each fighter had one loaded and ready. 17 torpedoes total. 17 chances to prove that the impossible was merely difficult. All wings, this is Captain Jiwan, she transmitted. Stay in formation. Approach at maximum stealth. Do not fire until you are within 100 meters of your target. The shields will not see you coming. Make every shot count. The fighters accelerated. They wove through the battlefield like ghosts, avoiding detection by staying close to debris and using the chaos as cover. The Kralvin were focused on destroying the station. They never noticed the small ships approaching from behind. Jiwan targeted the nearest dreadnought. It was massive, easily 2 kilometers long. Its weapons blazed as it poured fire into Titan Station. She flew closer. 50 meters, 20, 10. Close enough to see the intricate patterns on the alien hull. Close enough to count the weapon ports. Fire, she whispered. The quantum torpedo launched. For a fraction of a second, it existed in superposition, both real and unreal. The Kralvin shields detected nothing. The torpedo phased through the barrier as if it did not exist. Then it collapsed into a single quantum state. Suddenly it was there, inside the shield, meters from the hull. The detonation was beautiful and terrible. The warhead contained enough antimatter to vaporize a small city. It exploded directly against the dreadnought's armor. Metal superheated and tore apart. Internal compartments breached. Atmosphere ignited. The massive warship split in half, both sections spinning away as secondary explosions ripped through its interior. All across the battlefield, human fighters unleashed their torpedoes. 12 more dreadnoughts died in the span of seconds. Massive explosions lit up the void. For the first time in 300 years, Kralvin warships burned. Varkesh stared in disbelief. Impossible. Nothing could penetrate Kralvin shields. Nothing. Yet his fleet was dying. Ships that had conquered worlds were exploding like toys. Alarms screamed across his flagship as officers shouted reports of catastrophic losses. "All ships, retreat!" he roared. "Retreat now!" The Kralvan fleet turned and fled. Their formation broke apart as captains prioritized survival over discipline. They jumped to hyperspace in a chaotic exodus, leaving behind debris and the bodies of thousands of dead crew members. Silence fell over the battlefield. Titan Station was in ruins. Fires burned in exposed sections. Half the structure was gone. But they had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Commander Park stood on the shattered remains of her bridge, looking out at the debris field where 3 Kralvan dreadnoughts had been reduced to wreckage. She activated her communication system. "All personnel, this is Commander Park. We have won the day. The enemy has retreated, but our casualties are severe. Begin rescue operations immediately. Save everyone you can." Juan landed her fighter in one of the few intact hangar bays. Her hands were steady now. The fear had burned away, replaced by something colder. Determination. Purpose. She had watched worlds die. Now she had watched an empire bleed. News of the battle spread across human space within hours. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies. Everywhere people gathered to watch footage of burning Kralvan warships. The impossible had happened. Humanity had struck back and won. Admiral Daehyun received the reports in his headquarters beneath Geneva. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before the reality set in. They had won one battle. One. The Kralvan would return with greater numbers and new tactics. This was not the end. It was barely the beginning. Dr. Seojin appeared on his communication screen, exhausted but excited. "Admiral, the quantum torpedoes worked perfectly, but we used 13 of them. We only have 4 left. I need more neutronium. Without it, we cannot defend against the next attack." Daehyun nodded. "Captain Jiwan is already preparing for the mining expedition to the Viridian Expanse. She leaves tomorrow. We will have more resources soon." Across the galaxy in the throne room of the Kralvan High Council, Varkesh knelt before his emperor. The chamber was vast and cold, built to intimidate. The emperor was an ancient being, nearly 400 years old, scarred from countless wars. "You told us the humans were weak," the emperor said. His voice was quiet but filled with menace. "You told us this conquest would take days. Instead, you lost 13 dreadnoughts. 13, do you understand the shame you have brought to our empire?" Varkesh kept his head bowed. "My emperor, the humans have developed a new weapon, something that bypasses our shields." "I did not anticipate." "You did not anticipate," the emperor interrupted. "Those words are why empires fall. You will return to human space. You will take triple the forces. You will personally oversee their destruction. If you fail again, you will not live to make excuses. Am I clear?" "Yes, my emperor." Varkesh left the throne room burning with humiliation and rage. The humans had embarrassed him, made him look weak. He would make them pay for that. He would turn their worlds into ash. He would kill every last one of them until the galaxy forgot they ever existed. Ambassador Minyoung watched the footage of the battle from a hidden station in neutral space. Around her sat representatives from a dozen subjugated species. The Thalen, the Dracon, the Vryn, others whose names were nearly forgotten. They had gathered to witness something impossible. "You see," Minyoung said quietly, "the Kralvan can bleed. They can lose. They are not gods. They are not unstoppable. They are just another empire built on fear, and fear can be broken." One of the Thalen representatives, an elder with scarred gills, spoke. "You have shown us hope." The Viridian Expanse was a graveyard of ships and dreams. Thousands of asteroids tumbled through the darkness, some as small as houses, others large enough to have their own gravity. Between them drifted the wreckage of old battles. Broken hulls, dead stations, the bones of civilizations that had tried to claim these resources and failed. Captain Jiwan's small fleet entered the Expanse carefully. 5 ships, 2 mining vessels, 3 escorts. Not enough to fight a real battle, but hopefully enough to extract the neutronium they desperately needed and escape before anyone noticed. The Expanse was neutral territory controlled by the Corvin Syndicate, a coalition of pirates and smugglers who had somehow maintained independence while empires rose and fell around them. They survived by being useful. They traded with everyone, fought no one, and asked no questions. The Kralvan tolerated them because they provided access to resources without the cost of maintaining permanent military presence. Ji-won knew the Syndicate would not welcome humans. The Battle of Titan Station had made headlines across the galaxy. Anyone who helped humanity would become a target. But they had no choice. The neutronium deposits here were the closest source, and time was running out. They had barely started scanning for deposits when the Syndicate found them. 20 warships emerged from hiding spots among the asteroids. They were a mix of different designs, stolen or modified from various species. Ugly but functional, the kind of ships built by people who valued survival over aesthetics. A communication channel opened. The face that appeared belonged to Warlord Thesh, leader of the Syndicate. He was a Corvan, a species that resembled bipedal wolves with cybernetic enhancements. His left eye glowed red, replaced by machinery. Scars crisscrossed his face. "Humans," he said, "you have made a mistake coming here. This is my territory. You mine nothing without my permission, and I do not give permission to those who bring trouble." Ji-won kept her voice calm. "We mean no disrespect, Warlord Thesh. We need neutronium. We are willing to pay fair prices and leave quickly. Our presence here does not have to be anyone's business." Thesh laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Fair prices? Your species just declared war on the Kralvan Empire. Do you know what they will do to me if they discover I helped you? They will burn this entire expanse. Every ship. Every station. Everyone I have ever known will die screaming." "Then help us win," Ji-won said. "If we defeat the Kralvan, you will not have to fear them anymore." Thesh's expression darkened. "Defeat them? You destroyed a dozen ships and you think you have won? The Kralvan have thousands of warships. Tens of thousands. They have been conquering the galaxy for 3 centuries. You are insects pretending to be giants. No, I will not help you. But I will help myself." He gestured to someone off-screen. "The Kralvan are offering a substantial bounty for human coordinates, especially for the location of your home system. I believe that information is worth more than whatever you could pay me." Dr. Seojin was aboard one of the mining vessels, personally overseeing the expedition. When he heard Thesh's threat, he immediately began working. His fingers flew across his console, accessing the Syndicate's network through their open communication channel. It was risky. If they detected the intrusion, they would fire immediately, but Seojin was betting that the Syndicate had grown complacent. Pirates rarely expected to be hacked. He found what he needed within seconds. Financial records, transaction histories, communication logs. The Syndicate kept detailed records of their dealings with the Kralvan. Too detailed. Seojin discovered something interesting. The Kralvan had been systematically underpaying the Syndicate for years. Worse, Corvan traders who knew too much about Kralvan military movements had a habit of disappearing, murdered quietly to protect Imperial secrets. Seojin transmitted the data directly to every ship in the Syndicate fleet, bypassing Thesh's control. Within seconds, every Corvan pirate was reading evidence of betrayal. Thesh realized what was happening and tried to shut down the transmission, but it was too late. His communication channels exploded with angry voices, his subordinates demanding explanations, his lieutenants questioning his leadership. The Syndicate, held together by profit and fear, began to fracture. One voice rose above the others. "Lieutenant Kyle, Thesh's second in command. You knew. You knew the Kralvan were killing our people and you said nothing. You let them murder Corvan traders to protect your profits." Thesh snarled. "I kept us alive. I kept us independent. You think morality matters in this galaxy? The Kralvan are power. We survive by being useful to power." "No," Kale said quietly. "We survive by having no loyalty to anyone. But you chose a side. You chose them over us. That was your mistake." The Syndicate fleet turned on itself. Ships that had fought together for decades suddenly became enemies. Weapons that were meant for the humans instead targeted each other. The asteroid field lit up with weapons fire as the Civil War erupted. Juan watched in shock. She had not expected this. Her mission was to mine resources, not start a pirate rebellion. But Dr. Seojin had seen an opportunity and taken it. Now they had to decide which side to support. "Captain," one of her officers said, "we should leave while they are fighting each other." Ji-won considered it. They could escape. Let the Syndicate destroy itself and return later. But if Lieutenant Kale lost, Thesh would hunt them down. If Kale won, he might be grateful for help. It was a gamble. But everything was a gamble now. "All ships, this is Captain Ji-won. Target the vessels loyal to Thesh, support Lieutenant Kale's forces. Fire at will." The human ships joined the battle. They were outnumbered, but their weapons were more advanced than the hodgepodge arsenal of the pirates. Where they focused their fire, ships died. The tide turned. Kale's rebellion, which should have been crushed within minutes, suddenly had a chance. Thesh realized he was losing. He tried to flee, but Kale's ships blocked his escape route. A brief firefight ended with Thesh's flagship crippled and venting atmosphere. The warlord transmitted one final message before his ship exploded. "You have doomed us all," he said. Then he was gone. The remaining ships loyal to him surrendered. The battle was over. Lieutenant Kale, now the de facto leader of what remained of the syndicate, contacted Jiwan. He looked tired, older than his years. "You helped us when you did not have to. That means something. We need neutronium," Jiwan said, "and you need allies. The Kralvin will come for you eventually." Thesh was right about one thing. You cannot stay neutral forever. Kyle nodded slowly. "Mind what you need. We will provide supply routes and protection. In return, we want access to your quantum weapons technology. And we want a promise. When you fight the Kralvin again, we fight with you. If we are going to die anyway, better to die on our feet." "Deal," Jiwan said. The mining operation began. Over the next week, they extracted enough neutronium to build 50 quantum torpedoes. It was not much. Not enough to win a war, but it was a start. While Jiwan secured resources, Ambassador Minyoung attended a secret summit on Korvala, a frozen moon on the edge of known space. Representatives from a dozen subjugated species had gathered. The Thalen, the Dracon, the Vryn, the Althari, others whose civilizations had been nearly erased by Kralvin conquest. The summit was tense. These species had been enemies before the Kralvin came. Old grudges and territorial disputes still simmered beneath the surface. Many were skeptical that humanity could lead a resistance. The Vryn representative, a massive insectoid with compound eyes, was particularly hostile. "Why should we follow humans?" It clicked. "You have fought one battle, one. We have fought the Kralvin for decades and lost every time. You are inexperienced, weak. You will doom us all with your foolish hope." Minyoung stood before them, young by diplomatic standards. Barely 30 years old, but she had spent months building these contacts. She knew what they needed to hear. "You are right," she said. "We are inexperienced. We have fought one battle and barely survived. But that is exactly why we will win. We do not carry the weight of your defeats. We do not know that the Kralvin are unbeatable. We look at their empire and see weakness, overextension, arrogance. They believe they are invincible, and that belief will destroy them." She activated a holographic display showing footage from Titan Station, Kralvin dreadnoughts burning, the impossible made real. "We are not asking you to trust us because we are strong," Minyoung continued. "We are asking you to trust us because we refuse to surrender. Every species here has been conquered because at some point you made calculations. You decided survival was better than resistance. We will not make that calculation. We will fight until we win or die. And if you join us, maybe, just maybe, we can all live free." The Althari representative spoke. They were energy beings trapped in containment suits by Kralvin technology. "Words are easy. Prove your commitment. Show us you can deliver more than one victory." "Fair enough," Minyoung said. "Give us ships, resources, intelligence. In return, we will give you hope. And when the Kralvin come for us with everything they have, you will see whether humans keep their promises." The summit ended with fragile agreements. The Thalen committed their hidden shipyards. The Dracon promised mining resources. The Vryn agreed to share intelligence on Kralvin fleet movements. The Althari remained skeptical but did not actively oppose the alliance. The Kralvin returned with fury. High Commander Varkish led an armada 3 times larger than before. Over 900 warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Their formation was perfect, overwhelming. At the center, protected by layers of shields and defensive screens, moved the Desolation Array. The array was a monstrosity. 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor plating. Its main cannon could focus enough energy to tear apart continental plates. One shot would be enough to doom Earth. The Kralvin had brought extinction in the form of a single weapon. Admiral Daehyun stood in the command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching enemy. Every screen told the same story. Humanity was outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that wanted revenge, but they were not alone. The Thalen had delivered 30 new warships, modified with human technology. The Dracon contributed 15 heavy cruisers built to ram and absorb punishment. The Corvin Syndicate sent fast attack ships. The Vryn provided intelligence on Kralvin weak points. Even the Althari, skeptical until the end, contributed energy projectors that could disrupt enemy shields. The combined fleet gathered at the outer belt, humanity's last line of defense. 200 ships total against 900. Still impossible odds, but better than facing the Kralvin alone. Daehyun gathered his commanders for a final briefing. Captain Ji-won, Dr. Seojun, Lieutenant Kale of the Syndicate, Thalen Fleetmaster Hyron, Dracon Warchief Grath, faces from a dozen different species united by desperation and hope. The desolation array must be destroyed, Daehyun said. If it reaches Earth, we lose. Everything we have built, everything we are fighting for, ends. So we split our forces. The main fleet engages the Kralvin Armada in a frontal assault. Draw their attention. Make them commit everything to the battle. While they are focused on us, Captain Ji-won leads a strike team through their formation to destroy the array. Ji-won studied the tactical display. The route to the array meant flying through the heart of the enemy fleet, exposed under fire from every direction. Her squadron would need to be fast, lucky, and willing to die. I will need 12 ships, she said. Stealth fighters with quantum torpedoes. And boarding teams. We cannot destroy the array from the outside. Too much armor. We need to get inside and blow the reactor core. Dr. Seojun stood. I am coming with you. Daehyun shook his head. You are too valuable. We need you to build more weapons. You need someone who understands Kralvin reactor technology, Seojun replied. I designed the torpedoes. I know their systems better than anyone. If something goes wrong during the boarding action, I am the only one who can adapt the plan. I go where the mission fails. The room was silent. Finally, Daehyun nodded. Very well, but you come back alive. That is an order. Seojun smiled grimly. I will do my best. The Kralvin fleet advanced like a predator that knew it had already won. Varkesh stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the human defensive line with satisfaction. So few ships, so little hope. This time there would be no surprises, no tricks, just overwhelming force crushing foolish resistance. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Admiral Daehyun, I know you can hear me. Look at my armada. Look at the desolation array. You fought well at Titan Station. You even made me bleed. But this ends today. Surrender now and I will grant you quick deaths. Your people will be enslaved, but they will live. Resist and I will turn Earth into ash and dust. You have 1 hour to decide. Daehyun's response was simple. No, the battle began. The human fleet charged forward. Every ship firing. Every weapon blazing. Missiles streaked through the void. Railgun slugs crossed the distance at impossible speeds. Energy beams carved through the darkness. The Kralvin shields absorbed the initial assault, but the Althari energy projectors did their work. Disrupting, weakening, creating gaps. Quantum torpedoes found those gaps. Kralvin warships exploded. Not as many as before, but enough. Enough to show that humanity had learned. Enough to prove they were not helpless. But the Kralvin had learned too. They had adapted their tactics. Their ships moved in tight formations, overlapping shields to protect each other. They focused fire on individual human vessels, destroying them one by one. For every Kralvin ship that died, 3 allied ships burned. The Dracon heavy cruisers proved their worth. When their shields failed and their weapons ran dry, they accelerated forward on suicide runs, massive armored vessels ramming into Kralvin dreadnoughts. The impacts were spectacular. Metal tearing, hulls breaching, ships dying together in mutual destruction. The Thalen carriers deployed swarms of drones, thousands of small automated fighters that harassed enemy ships, targeting sensors and weapon ports. They were individually weak but overwhelming in numbers. The Kralvin wasted ammunition shooting at targets barely worth killing. While the main battle raged, Captain Ji-won led her strike team into hell. 12 ships, flying through the chaos, using debris as cover, exploiting every gap in the Kralvin formation. Enemy fire lit up all around them. Plasma beams missed by meters. Missiles exploded close enough to shake their ships. 2 fighters were destroyed before they were halfway through, but the rest pressed forward. Closer, closer, until finally they reached the desolation array. The weapon was defended by elite Kralvin commandos, soldiers bred for war, enhanced with cybernetics and genetic modifications. They wore powered armor that could shrug off small arms fire. They carried weapons that could cut through starship hulls. G1's boarding teams breached the array through a maintenance airlock. The fighting was immediate and brutal. Human Marines against Kralvan warriors in narrow corridors where every corner could hide death. Grenades, close-quarters gunfire, hand-to-hand combat when ammunition ran out. Dr. Seojun fought alongside the Marines. He was not a soldier, never trained for combat, but he carried a rifle and fired when enemies appeared. His job was to reach the reactor core. Everything else was secondary. They pushed deeper into the array. The Marines created a corridor of death, trading their lives for every meter of progress. By the time they reached the core chamber, half the boarding team was dead or wounded. The reactor core was massive, a sphere of contained energy that powered the array's main weapon. Seojun placed charges carefully, calculating the exact points where detonation would cause a cascade failure. The reactor would not just shut down. It would explode, and the explosion would be powerful enough to tear through the entire weapon. Charges set, Seojun transmitted. 10 minutes until detonation. Everyone evacuate now. The team began retreating, fighting their way back through corridors now swarming with Kralvan reinforcements. They were almost to the boarding ships when Seojun realized something was wrong. The charges were degrading faster than expected. Kralvan engineers had detected the sabotage and were trying to disable the explosives. If the charges failed, the mission failed. The array would survive. Earth would die. Seojun made his decision. Captain G1, get your people out. I am staying behind to ensure detonation. Negative, G1 replied. We are not leaving you. You do not have a choice, Seojun said calmly. Someone needs to manually trigger the charges if the timer fails. That someone is me. Tell Admiral Daehyun I kept my promise. I came back alive long enough to finish the job. He sealed the bulkhead behind him, locking himself in the reactor chamber. Ji-won screamed for him to open the door, but he ignored her. The Marines tried to force it open, but there was no time. Kralvan soldiers were closing in. Go, Seojun transmitted one final time. Make it count. The boarding team evacuated. Their ships launched from the array just as Kralvan commandos breached the hangar. They accelerated away at maximum speed, pursued by enemy fighters. Inside the reactor chamber, Dr. Seojun stood alone. Kralvan engineers worked frantically to disable his charges. He smiled. They were too late. He triggered the detonation manually. The desolation array exploded from within. The reactor core breached in a cataclysmic release of energy. The entire weapon tore itself apart. Massive sections spun away into space. The explosion was so powerful it destroyed dozens of nearby Kralvan warships caught in the blast radius. High Commander Varkesh watched his superweapon die. The array he had counted on, the weapon that should have ended this war, gone, destroyed by a handful of determined humans and their scientists who had stayed. Behind to ensure victory, Admiral Daehyun saw the explosion on his tactical display. He understood immediately what it meant. Seojun was dead, but Earth would survive. All ships, Daehyun transmitted. The array is destroyed. Full offensive. Make them pay for every meter of space. The Allied fleet surged forward with renewed fury. The battle intensified. Ships burned on both sides. The void between fleets became a graveyard of metal and bodies. But without the array, the Kralvan advantage was diminished. The fight became more equal. Varkesh realized he was losing control. His formation was breaking apart. His ships were taking catastrophic losses. The humans and their allies fought with a desperation born of knowing they had nothing left to lose. Then, in a final act of spite, Varkesh ordered his ships to target civilian evacuation convoys fleeing from nearby colonies. If he could not win militarily, he would make the humans suffer. News of the Desolation Array's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every subjugated species, every enslaved world, every resistance cell hiding in the shadows, they all heard the same impossible message. The Kralvan had failed. Again. For 3 centuries, the Empire had ruled through fear. The fear that resistance was futile, that the Kralvan were unstoppable, that defeat was inevitable. But now that fear began to crack. If humanity could destroy the Desolation Array, maybe other impossible things were possible too. Maybe freedom was not just a dream. Across dozens of worlds, rebellions ignited. The Vryn Hive launched coordinated strikes on Kralvan supply depots, destroying enough resources to cripple entire battle groups. The Althari sabotaged communication networks, plunging Kralvan-occupied systems into darkness. The Thalen workers in orbital shipyards staged mass uprisings, seizing control of facilities and turning weapons meant for the Empire against their oppressors. The galaxy was waking up, and it was angry. High Commander Varkesh returned to the Kralvan homeworld in disgrace. He had lost the array, lost hundreds of ships, lost the respect of his subordinates. The Emperor summoned him to the throne room where the High Council waited to pass judgment, but Varkesh did not come to accept punishment. He came with a plan, a final gambit that would either restore his honor or doom the Empire. "My Emperor," Varkesh said, "I propose we commit the Grand Armada. Every ship, every soldier, every resource. We strike at Earth directly and end this war in one overwhelming assault. If we destroy humanity's homeworld, the resistance will collapse. The galaxy will remember what happens to those who defy us." The Emperor considered this. The Grand Armada had never been defeated. 10,000 warships, the combined might of the entire Empire. Using it meant stripping defenses from every sector, leaving the Empire vulnerable to rebellion. But if it succeeded, the Kralvan would crush the human threat forever and restore order through terror. "Very well," the Emperor said. "You will have the Grand Armada. But understand this, Varkesh. If you fail, you will be executed. Not quickly, not honorably. Your death will be slow and public, an example to any who believe failure is acceptable." Varkesh bowed. "I will not fail, my Emperor." Admiral Dahyun received intelligence reports about the Grand Armada's mobilization. 10,000 ships. The number was almost incomprehensible. Even with all their allies, humanity could field maybe 500 vessels. They would be outnumbered 20 to 1. But Dahyun saw an opportunity hidden within the threat. If the Kralvan committed everything to attacking Earth, their empire would be exposed. Rebellions could strike at undefended systems, liberate worlds, destroy infrastructure. The war would not be decided in a single battle. It would be decided across 1,000 fronts simultaneously. He contacted Ambassador Min Young, who had spent months building networks of resistance cells. "The Kralvan are coming with everything they have. We need to coordinate with every allied species, every rebel group. When the Grand Armada arrives at Earth, we launch simultaneous attacks across the Empire, hit their administrative centers, their shipyards, their slave processing facilities. We turn their strength into weakness." Min Young understood immediately. "You are not trying to win a battle. You are trying to break an empire." "Exactly," Dahyun said. "The Kralvan believe this is about military superiority. They are wrong. This is about showing the galaxy that tyranny can be defeated, that freedom is worth dying for. If we do this right, we do not just save Earth. We liberate everyone." The planning took weeks, coordination across dozens of species, synchronizing attacks light years apart. Every resistance cell received their targets. Every rebel fleet prepared for deployment. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the moment when everything would change. The Grand Armada arrived at Earth's orbit like a storm that blotted out the sun. 10,000 warships, so many that their mass created gravitational distortions. They filled the sky with metal and weapons, a promise of extinction delivered in steel. But they were not alone. As the Kralvan fleet emerged from hyperspace, so did humanity's allies. Ships from every corner of the galaxy, Thalen carriers, Dracon cruisers, Vryn swarm ships, Althari energy vessels, Corvan raiders, dozens of other species, some whose names humans had never heard, all united by a single purpose. The defensive fleet numbered 2,000 ships, still outnumbered 5 to 1, still facing impossible odds, but no longer alone. Varkesh stared at the assembled forces in disbelief. How had the humans gathered so many allies? How had subjugated species found the courage to openly defy the Empire? This should have been a simple execution. Instead, it was a war. "All ships," he transmitted. "Destroy them. Leave nothing alive." The battle for Earth began. Entire sections of orbital space ignited with weapons fire. Thousands of ships fighting in a space so crowded that every shot found a target. Plasma beams crossed railgun fire. Missiles collided mid-flight. Energy shields flared and collapsed under relentless bombardment. The void became a hellscape of burning metal and dying stars. Captain Jiwan commanded a squadron of quantum torpedo bombers. She led them through the chaos, targeting Kralvan dreadnoughts and exploiting every weakness. Her pilots fought with the skill born of desperation. They knew this was humanity's last stand. Win or die. No other options existed. The Thalen carriers deployed drone swarms by the thousands, overwhelming Kralvin Point defenses, creating openings for larger ships to strike. When the carriers were destroyed, their drones continued fighting. Automated warriors that did not know fear or retreat. The Dracon heavy cruisers proved their worth one final time. When their weapons failed and their shields collapsed, they accelerated into Kralvin formations on suicide runs. Massive armored vessels ramming dreadnoughts and exploding in spectacular displays of sacrifice and fury. The Althari energy projectors disrupted Kralvin shields across entire sectors of the battlefield. Where their beams touched, defenses weakened. Allied ships concentrated fire on those gaps, tearing through armor and destroying warships that had seemed invincible. As the battle raged around Earth, across the galaxy, rebellion struck. Friend forces liberated their homeworld in a brutal ground campaign. Thalen saboteurs destroyed the Empire's primary shipyard. Althari freed millions of prisoners from containment facilities. Corvin raiders hit supply lines. Every enslaved species struck at their oppressors simultaneously. The Kralvin Empire, stretched too thin, began to fracture. Garrison commanders called for reinforcements that could not be sent. Governors watched their worlds burn. The centralized authority that had held the Empire together started to collapse. Ambassador Minyung broadcast a message across all Kralvin communication channels. Not to the leadership, to the soldiers, the common warriors who had been told they fought for glory and honor. Soldiers of the Kralvin Empire, she said, look around you. Look at what your leaders have built. An empire of slaves and corpses. Worlds burned, civilizations destroyed. For what? So a few generals can sit on thrones. You are dying for their ambition. You are killing for their greed, but you do not have to. Surrender, leave the battlefield. Go home, this war is over. Your empire is falling. Do not die defending something already dead. Her words, combined with footage of liberated worlds and destroyed Kralvin facilities, created chaos in enemy ranks. Some ships continued fighting with fanatic loyalty. Others hesitated. A few openly defected, turning their weapons on their own fleet. Varkesh watched his carefully assembled armada dissolve into chaos. Morale collapsed. Discipline shattered. Ships fled without orders. Captains refused to fight. The Grand Armada, undefeated for centuries, was dying not from overwhelming force but from internal collapse. He opened a channel to his remaining loyal ships. All vessels fight to the death. Anyone who retreats will be executed. We do not surrender. The transmission ended. Varkesh's own officers had killed him. His second-in-command appeared on the communication screen. This is Captain Zarak of the Eternal Dominion. High Commander Varkesh is dead. I am assuming command. All Kralvin ships cease fire immediately. We surrender. Repeat, we surrender. The battle stopped. Not all at once. Fighting continued in scattered pockets as word spread, but gradually the weapons fire ceased. Ships powered down. The Grand Armada, broken and defeated, surrendered to a coalition they had been sent to destroy. Admiral Daehyun stood in the command center, watching the battlefield fall silent. Around him, officers wept with relief and exhaustion. They had won, against impossible odds, against an empire that had ruled for 300 years. They had won, but the cost was devastating. Over 1,000 Allied ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands dead, cities on Earth damaged by debris from orbital combat. The victory was real, but so was the price. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Kralvin homeworld surrendered. Their emperor was tried for war crimes. Liberated species began rebuilding their civilizations. Old grudges and conflicts resurfaced, but so did hope. The possibility of a better future. Earth became the symbolic heart of a new galactic coalition. Not because humans had conquered anyone, but because they had refused to surrender. Because they had inspired others to fight. Because when the galaxy needed someone to stand against tyranny, humanity had risen.